My best friend falsely accused me of cheating in chess. Now I have 1 year to prove the world wrong. I walked into my chess club expecting a normal Tuesday practice, only to be met with whispers and sideways glances that made my stomach drop to the floor. "There he is," someone muttered from the corner table where the intermediate players usually set up their boards. The conversation stopped dead when they noticed me standing in the doorway, my chess bag still hanging from my shoulder. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The club room felt different somehow, like the air had been sucked out of it. Usually people would wave me over or ask about my latest tournament prep. Instead, I got cold stares and hushed conversations that ended the moment I took a step forward. I spotted my usual practice partner, Leo, arranging pieces on board 3. We'd been working together for months on my weak endgame positions. He looked up when I approached, but instead of his normal grin, his expression was guarded. "Hey," I said, dropping my bag next to the table. "Ready to crush some rook endings?" Leo shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Actually, I'm going to work with someone else today." The words hit me like a cold slap. "What? Why?" He glanced around the room nervously. "Look, I just think it's better if we take a break from practicing together." "A break? We have the regional qualifiers in 3 weeks. You said you wanted to work on your technique." "I know what I said." Leo's voice was sharper than I'd ever heard it. But things change. Before I could ask what he meant, our club president, Ramon, called for everyone's attention from the front of the room. The conversations died down as 20-something players turned toward him. "Quick announcement before we start practice," Ramon said, his usual enthusiasm noticeably absent. "Just a reminder that our club has a zero-tolerance policy for any form of cheating or unsportsmanlike conduct. Anyone found violating the rules will face immediate suspension or expulsion." My heart started beating faster. Why was he bringing this up now? We'd never had cheating problems before. Ramon's eyes swept across the room and seemed to linger on me for just a moment too long. "We've received some concerning reports recently, so everyone needs to be extra mindful of proper tournament etiquette and fair play." The room stayed uncomfortably quiet. I felt like everyone was looking at me, even though most people were staring at their boards or the floor. After Ramon finished, I tried to find an open opponent for practice games. Usually players would be eager to test themselves against someone with my rating. Today, I got excuse after excuse. "I'm working on opening prep. Already committed to analyzing with someone else. Maybe next time." I finally cornered Jamie, a newer member who usually jumped at the chance to play higher-rated opponents. She was setting up pieces by herself in the corner. "Want to play a few games?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Jamie looked genuinely uncomfortable. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not? We've played dozens of times." She lowered her voice. "Look, I don't want to get involved in whatever's going on with you right now. People are saying—" She stopped herself. "People are saying what?" "Nothing. Forget I said anything." But I couldn't forget. "Jamie, what are people saying?" She glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned closer. "There are rumors that you've been getting help during tournament games, like electronic assistance or something." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "That's ridiculous. I've never cheated in my life." "I'm just telling you what I heard." "Who told you that?" Jamie hesitated. "It's just what people are talking about. Your recent tournament results have been impressive." Impressive. Like that was somehow suspicious instead of the result of months of grinding through tactical puzzles and endgame studies until my eyes burned. I spent the rest of practice sitting alone at an empty board, pretending to analyze positions while my mind raced. The cheating rumors explained everything. The cold shoulders, the whispered conversations, Leo's sudden refusal to practice with me. Someone was spreading lies about me and they were working. When practice ended, I packed up my things slowly, hoping someone might approach me or offer an explanation. Instead, people filed out in small groups, their conversations stopping whenever they passed my table. I was almost at the door when I heard my name mentioned behind me. I turned to see 2 regular members huddled by the bulletin board speaking in low voices. "His rating jumped like 200 points in 6 months, one was saying. "That doesn't just happen naturally. Plus, did you notice how he always seems to find the perfect moves in critical positions? It's like he has a computer in his head." I wanted to scream that my rating improved because I'd been studying 8 hours a day, that I found good moves because I'd memorized thousands of tactical patterns. Instead, I pushed through the door and walked to my car in silence. The drive home felt endless. I kept replaying the evening, trying to figure out where these rumors had started. My recent tournament success wasn't suspicious. It was earned through brutal preparation and countless hours of practice. Every player in the club knew how hard I worked, didn't they? By the time I got home, doubt was creeping in around the edges of my anger. Had my improvement really been that dramatic? Was there something about my play that looked unnatural to other people? I pulled up my tournament results from the last 6 months. The numbers didn't lie. My rating had climbed steadily as I'd won more games against stronger opponents. But looking at it objectively, I could see how the improvement might seem sudden to people who didn't know about my training routine. Still, improvement wasn't evidence of cheating. I'd earned every single rating point through legitimate play. The worst part wasn't the false accusations. It was the realization that people I considered friends had been so quick to believe them. Leo, Jamie, even Ramon seemed to suspect me based on nothing but gossip and speculation. I thought about the club member who'd started the whispered conversation when I walked in. The way he'd said, "There he is," like I was some kind of criminal. The coordinated cold shoulder I'd received from multiple people suggested this wasn't just random suspicion. Someone had been working to turn the club against me. As I sat in my room that night, staring at the chessboard on my desk, I realized this was bigger than just rumors. This was a deliberate campaign to destroy my reputation and push me out of the one place where I'd felt like I belonged. The question was, who would want to hurt me this badly and why? I had a sinking feeling I already knew the answer. To understand how deeply this betrayal cut, you need to know what the chess club meant to me and what I thought my friendship with Adrian meant to both of us. I joined the club as a freshman, barely knowing how the pieces moved beyond the basics my dad taught me when I was 8. The first few months were brutal. I lost every single game, sometimes in embarrassingly short fashion. Other members would finish their matches and gather around my board to watch me blunder away pieces in ways that made them wince. But something about the complexity hooked me. Every loss taught me something new, and I started staying after practice to analyze my games. I'd go home and study tactics until midnight, then wake up early to review opening principles before school. Adrian joined the club club that same year, but unlike me, he already had a solid foundation. His dad had been a competitive player, and Adrian could rattle off opening theory and endgame principles like he'd been born knowing them. Where I struggled to see 3 moves ahead, he was calculating long tactical sequences in his head. We became friends almost by accident. I was staying late one evening, trying to understand why my attack had failed in that day's game, when Adrian stopped by my table. "You moved your knight too early," he said, pointing at the position I'd been staring at for 20 minutes. "See? You opened up your king before you finished developing." He sat down and showed me 3 different ways the position could have played out if I'd been more patient. For the first time, the loss made sense instead of just feeling random and frustrating. That became our routine. Adrian would help me understand my mistakes, and I'd ask endless questions about why certain moves worked better than others. He never made me feel stupid for not knowing things that seemed obvious to him. "You think differently than most players," he told me one evening after I'd found an unusual tactical shot he'd missed. "You see patterns that aren't in the books." By sophomore year, my rating had climbed enough that I wasn't automatically losing every game. By junior year, I was winning more than I lost. Adrian and I practiced together constantly, analyzing positions and testing new openings against each other. The thing is, Adrian's improvement had plateaued. He knew the theory cold, but his tactical vision never developed the way mine did. His rating stayed in the same range for 2 years while mine kept climbing. I didn't think much of it at the time. Different players develop at different rates, and Adrian seemed genuinely happy about my progress. He'd celebrate my tournament wins and offer advice when I struggled with specific opponents. "You're going to surpass me soon," he said last spring after I'd won the regional scholastic championship. "I always knew you had more upside." I laughed it off. "You taught me everything I know. I wouldn't be here without your help." But looking back, I wonder if that conversation bothered him more than he let on. Maybe watching me surpass him felt different than he'd expected it would. By the start of senior year, my rating was nearly 300 points higher than his. I'd started playing in adult tournaments outside of school, holding my own against experienced players who'd been competing for decades. College chess coaches were reaching out about recruitment. Adrian was still a solid player, but he was no longer one of the strongest in our club. New members looked up to me for advice instead of him. When we played practice games, I won most of them. The shift was subtle at first. Adrian would make comments about how lucky some of my tournament results were, or how I'd gotten favorable pairings that made my path easier. When I analyzed positions with newer members, he'd sometimes interrupt to correct something I'd said, even when my analysis was sound. "Actually, that move doesn't work because of this tactic," he'd say, then realize his refutation was wrong and have to backtrack. I started noticing he'd volunteer information about my losses, but never mention my wins. If someone asked how I'd done in a recent tournament, Adrian would focus on the 1 game I'd lost instead of the 4 I'd won. Still, these felt like minor annoyances rather than signs of a deeper problem. Adrian was my friend. We'd spent 3 years supporting each other through losses and celebrating victories together. I trusted him completely. That trust made everything that happened next so much worse. The club had always been my sanctuary. It was the one place where I felt like I truly belonged, where my obsessive studying and endless tactical drilling made perfect sense to everyone around me. Other students thought I was weird for spending Saturday nights analyzing Grandmaster games. In the chess club, that level of dedication was respected and understood. More than that, chess gave me an identity. I wasn't the kid who struggled in English class or felt awkward at parties. I was someone who could calculate complex variations and find brilliant tactical shots under pressure. My tournament results proved I belonged in competitive chess circles. Adrian understood that better than anyone. He knew how many hours I spent preparing for each tournament, how carefully I analyzed my mistakes, how much every rating point meant to me. He'd seen me devastated after tough losses and euphoric after breakthrough wins, which is why his betrayal felt like having the ground ripped out from underneath me. See, the rumors weren't just attacking my chess ability, they were attacking the foundation of who I'd become. If people believed I was cheating, then everything I'd accomplished meant nothing. Every hour of study, every tactical puzzle, every endgame I'd memorized would be dismissed as fraud. Worse, the accusations were designed to be impossible to disprove. How do you prove you're not getting electronic assistance during games? How do you demonstrate that your improvement came from legitimate study rather than hidden help? The cruel genius of it was that my rapid improvement over the past 2 years made the cheating allegations seem plausible to people who didn't know about my training routine. They saw the results without understanding the work behind them. And Adrian knew exactly how to exploit that gap in their knowledge. He'd been there for every step of my chess journey. He knew which tournaments had been particularly important for my confidence, which opponents I'd struggled against, which tactical themes I'd worked hardest to master. He understood my playing style well enough to make his accusations sound credible to people who knew less about my development. The person best positioned to defend me had become the one working hardest to destroy me. That night after the disastrous club meeting, I lay awake replaying our entire friendship, looking for signs I'd missed. The comments about my luck, the subtle undermining during analysis sessions, the way he'd started emphasizing my losses over my wins. Had he been planning this campaign for months? Was every supportive comment hiding resentment? Or had something specific triggered his decision to turn against me? I didn't know. But as I stared at the ceiling, one thing became crystal clear. The person I trusted most had been the one orchestrating my downfall. The question was what I could do about it. The rumors got worse before I understood how orchestrated they really were. The next club meeting, I showed up determined to address the situation head on. If people had questions about my improvement, I'd explain my training routine. If they wanted to see my analysis methods, I'd demonstrate them. I figured transparency would shut down the speculation. I was completely naive about what I was walking into. Adrian was already there when I arrived, surrounded by a group of members near the tournament results board. He looked up when I entered, and for just a second, I caught something in his expression, a flicker of satisfaction that disappeared so quickly I almost missed it. "Hey," I said, approaching the group. "Can we talk? I think there's been some misunderstanding about—" "Actually," Adrian interrupted, "we were just discussing the upcoming regional qualifiers. The entry deadline is next week." The conversation felt forced, like everyone was performing for my benefit. I noticed several people avoiding eye contact with me. "Right, well, I wanted to clear the air about these cheating rumors, I said directly. I know people have questions about my recent results, so I thought I could explain. Nobody accused you of anything, said Marcus, one of the senior members. We're just saying that electronic assistance has become a bigger problem in tournaments lately. But people are specifically talking about me, right? Jamie shouldn't have said anything. Adrian cut in smoothly. Look, nobody's making accusations. We're all just trying to stay focused on legitimate improvement. The way he said legitimate made it clear what he thought about my results. I felt the frustration building in my chest. My improvement is legitimate. I can show you my study materials, my analysis files, anything you want to see. That's not necessary, Adrian said. Everyone here respects hard work. But his tone suggested the opposite. And I noticed he kept steering the conversation away from specifics whenever I tried to defend myself. Over the following weeks, the pattern became clear. Adrian wasn't directly accusing me of anything where it could be traced back to him. Instead, he was asking questions that planted doubt. Interesting how he always seems to find the computer's first choice in critical positions. It's amazing how his tactical vision improved so suddenly after struggling for years. Did you notice he's been spending a lot of time on his phone between games at tournaments? Each comment seemed innocent in isolation, but together they painted a picture of suspicious behavior. And because Adrian had been my closest friend in the club, people treated his observations as especially credible. The worst part was how he'd frame his concerns as worry for my reputation. I just think people are starting to talk, he told me one afternoon after practice, when I'd finally cornered him alone. You know how rumors spread. Maybe you should be more careful about how things look. What things look? Like when you analyze positions so quickly during post-game reviews, or when you find tactics that stronger players miss. People notice that stuff. I stared at him. Are you seriously telling me to play worse so people won't be suspicious? I'm telling you to be aware of perceptions. You've worked hard to get where you are. It would be terrible if people started questioning that. But he was the one raising the questions. The gaslighting was subtle but relentless. Every conversation left me feeling confused and defensive. Adrian would express concern about rumors while simultaneously fueling them. He'd claim to support me while undermining my credibility with backhanded comments. I told everyone how dedicated you are, he'd say. Though I have to admit, even I'm surprised by how quickly you've improved. The doubt started eating at me. I began second-guessing my own moves during games, worried that playing too well would feed the suspicions. When I found a particularly strong tactical shot, I'd hesitate before playing it, wondering if it would look suspicious. My performance started suffering, which only made things worse. See? I overheard someone saying after I'd made a weak move in a crucial position. When he's not getting help, his play is totally different. The irony was crushing. The accusations were affecting my game so badly that my weaker play was being used as evidence that I'd been cheating before. Adrian seemed to be everywhere these conversations happened, never leading them but always present to add little confirmations that kept the doubts alive. You know, that does look different from his usual style, he'd agree thoughtfully. I started avoiding the club, which only made me seem more guilty. When I did show up, I felt like everyone was watching my every move, analyzing whether my behavior matched their suspicions. The breaking point came during a practice tournament Ramon organized to prepare for regionals. I was paired against Leo in the third round, the same Leo who'd refused to practice with me on that first terrible evening. I was playing well despite the pressure, building a strong position with careful maneuvering, but when I found a beautiful tactical sequence that would win material, I hesitated. The combination was exactly the kind of sharp calculation that people had been questioning. I spent 10 minutes double-checking the lines, making sure I wasn't missing anything. The tactic was sound, but playing it would probably trigger more whispers about computer assistance. I played a safer, weaker move instead. Leo immediately seized the initiative and gradually outplayed me from the resulting position. After I resigned, he seemed genuinely confused. Why didn't you play the knight sacrifice on move 23? He asked during the post-game analysis. It wins by force. Before I could answer, Adrian appeared at our board. Maybe he didn't see it, he said with false concern. That would be pretty normal for his actual playing strength. The comment was meant to sound supportive, but the implication was clear. My usual tactical vision was artificially enhanced. I snapped. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, Adrian said quickly. I just meant that everyone misses tactics sometimes. No, you meant something else. You've been making comments like that for weeks. The post-game analysis area had gotten quiet. Other players were glancing over at us. I think you're being paranoid, Adrian said, raising his voice slightly so others could hear. I've been defending you to people who have questions. What people? What questions? Look, I don't want to get into this here, he said, glancing around meaningfully. But if you're feeling defensive about your results, maybe that says something. I felt trapped. Anything I said would sound like the protest of someone with something to hide. Adrian had positioned himself as the reasonable one, trying to calm down his paranoid friend. This is ridiculous, I muttered, and walked away before I said something I'd regret. But the damage was done. The public confrontation had made me look unstable and defensive. I caught people exchanging knowing looks, as if my reaction had confirmed their suspicions. Adrian had played it perfectly. He'd goaded me into an emotional response, then positioned himself as the voice of reason when I'd lost my temper. Over the next week, the whispers intensified. People started talking about my outburst and whether it indicated guilt. The narrative was shifting from questions about cheating to concerns about my character and stability. He's been acting really strange lately, I heard someone say in the hallway outside the clubroom. Adrian said he's been paranoid and hostile when anyone asks about his games. Adrian's name came up in every conversation, always as a concerned friend trying to help people understand my behavior. He'd positioned himself as the expert on my mental state, the person who knew me well enough to interpret my reactions. The cruel genius of his campaign was becoming clear. He wasn't just spreading doubt about my chess ability, he was undermining my credibility as a person. Every attempt I made to defend myself only reinforced the narrative that I was guilty and unstable. I realized I was facing an impossible situation. The accusations were vague enough that I couldn't directly refute them, but specific enough to damage my reputation. Adrian had created a web of innuendo and suggestion that made me look guilty no matter how I responded. Denying the rumors made me seem defensive. Ignoring them made me seem guilty. Getting emotional proved I was unstable. Staying calm suggested I was calculating and manipulative. The final blow came when Ramon pulled me aside after practice one evening. Look, Look, I need to talk to you about something, he said, his usual friendliness replaced by formal concern. I've been hearing things, and I think we need to address them before they become a bigger problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of things? Questions about your tournament results. Concerns from other members. I don't want to believe there's anything to it, but he trailed off, but the implication was clear. The club president was taking the rumors seriously. Ramon, I've never cheated, not once. I can prove my improvement is legitimate. I'm sure it is, he said quickly, but perception matters. Some people are uncomfortable, and that's affecting the club atmosphere. So what are you saying? Ramon looked genuinely pained. I'm saying maybe you should consider taking a break from tournament play until this blows over, just for a few weeks to let things settle down. I stared at him. The regional qualifiers were in 2 weeks, the tournament I'd been preparing for all year. You're asking me to withdraw from regionals? I'm asking you to think about what's best for everyone involved. The request felt like a knife to the chest. After everything I'd worked for, I was being pushed out based on nothing but rumors and speculation, and I knew exactly who was behind it all. That night, I sat in my room staring at chess positions I couldn't concentrate on, feeling more isolated than I'd ever felt in my life. Adrian had systematically turned my safe space against me, using his knowledge of my insecurities and the club's dynamics to craft the perfect character assassination. I'd lost my practice partners, my tournament opportunity, and my reputation. Worst of all, I'd lost faith in my ability to defend myself against someone who knew exactly how to weaponize my own community against me. But Adrian had made one crucial mistake in his campaign. He'd gotten overconfident. The first crack in Adrian's perfect deception came from an unexpected source, his own arrogance. 2 days after Ramon suggested I withdraw from regionals, I was sitting in the library during lunch trying to focus on calculus homework, but mostly just feeling sorry for myself. That's when Zoe, a sophomore who'd joined the chess club recently, slid into the seat across from me. Can I ask you something? She said quietly, glancing around to make sure we weren't overheard. I looked up from equations I wasn't solving anyway. Sure. The stuff people are saying about you cheating, do you think it's true? The question caught me off guard. Everyone else had been treating the accusations like established fact or avoiding the topic entirely. No, I said, I've never cheated, not once. Zoe nodded slowly. That's what I thought. The thing is, I've been keeping track of something that doesn't make sense. She pulled out a small notebook and flipped to a page covered in her neat handwriting. I started noticing that whenever someone brought up your tournament results, Adrian always seemed to know specific details about games you'd played. Like, really specific details. My attention sharpened. What kind of details? Last week, when Marcus mentioned your win against that expert-level player, Adrian immediately talked about how you'd found some computer-like tactical sequence in the endgame. But here's the weird part. I looked up that game online afterward. The tactical shot he described wasn't even in your game. I stared at her. What do you mean? I mean, he made it up. He described this brilliant but suspicious-looking combination that never happened. But he said it so confidently that Marcus just nodded along. The implications hit me like a wave. He's not just spreading rumors about my actual games. He's inventing fake examples. Exactly. And there's more. Zoe flipped to another page. Remember when Leo asked about your playing style changes? Adrian went into this whole explanation about how your recent games showed different patterns that suggested outside assistance. But I've been reviewing your games from the club database, and your style has been totally consistent. She showed me a chart she'd made, tracking various aspects of my play over the past year. The data clearly showed steady improvement without any dramatic shifts in approach. You've been analyzing my games? I asked. Zoe looked slightly embarrassed. I wanted to understand what people were talking about. Plus, you're one of the strongest players in the club. I thought I could learn something. But the more I looked, the more I realized the accusations didn't match reality. I felt a surge of gratitude toward this sophomore who'd done more to defend me than any of my supposed friends. Have you told anyone else about this? Not yet. I wasn't sure if I should get involved, but watching everyone turn against you over stuff that isn't even true, it doesn't feel right. Zoe's evidence was compelling, but it was still her word against Adrian's. I needed something more concrete. That evening, I decided to do some investigating of my own. If Adrian was spreading false information about my games, there might be other inconsistencies I could uncover. I started by reviewing every conversation I could remember from the past month, looking for details that didn't add up. Adrian had been remarkably knowledgeable about tournament events he hadn't attended, opposition research he couldn't have done, and private conversations I'd supposedly had with coaches. Then I remembered something that had bothered me at the time, but I'd dismissed as unimportant. 3 weeks earlier, Adrian had mentioned my suspicious behavior during a tournament in the next town over. He'd specifically described how I'd been checking my phone between moves and acting nervous when tournament directors walked by my board. The problem was, Adrian hadn't been at that tournament. And when I thought about it carefully, I remembered the tournament director had praised my focus and professional demeanor during that event. I pulled up the tournament report online and found photos from the event. Sure enough, there I was in several shots, playing with obvious concentration, no phone in sight. The tournament director had even mentioned my sportsmanship in his summary. Adrian had fabricated the entire story. Armed with this knowledge, I started paying closer attention to his comments during club meetings. Now that I knew what to look for, the pattern was obvious. Adrian would make specific claims about my behavior or game analysis that sounded authoritative, but were completely made up. The most damning example came during a discussion about opening preparation. Adrian casually mentioned that I'd been asking unusual questions about computer evaluation functions during our practice sessions. He kept wanting to know about specific numerical evaluations instead of positional understanding, Adrian said with concern. It seemed like he was more interested in memorizing computer assessments than actually learning the positions. Multiple people nodded seriously at this revelation. The accusation was perfect, detailed enough to sound credible, technical enough that most members couldn't evaluate it themselves, and designed to suggest I was preparing with artificial assistance. It was also completely false. I'd never asked Adrian about computer evaluations. Our preparation sessions focused on classical positional themes and tactical patterns from master games. I could prove it because I'd been taking detailed notes during our analysis sessions, and those notes were sitting in my chess binder at home. That night, I went through 3 months of preparation notes, looking for any mention of computer evaluations games or numerical assessments. There were none. Every single page focused on traditional chess concepts, pawn structure, piece activity, tactical motifs. Adrian had invented another story from nothing, but my biggest breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Pure accident. I was at school early one morning using a computer in the library to print out an essay when I noticed someone had left their social media account logged in. I was about to log them out when I realized whose profile it was. Adrian's. I should have just closed the browser and minded my own business. But after weeks of systematic character assassination, curiosity got the better of me. I clicked on his recent messages. What I found made my hands shake. There was a group chat called Chess Drama with 5 members, including Adrian and 2 people from our club I recognized. The conversation history went back weeks, and it was filled with discussions about me. But these weren't concerned friends expressing worry about potential cheating. These were strategy sessions for destroying my reputation. Need to be more subtle about the phone thing, Adrian had written. Can't make it too obvious we're coordinating the accusations. Another message. The computer evaluation angle is working. People are starting to question his preparation methods. And then the message that made everything crystal clear. Regional qualifiers are in 2 weeks. If we can get him to withdraw, the path opens up for the rest of us. Just need to keep the pressure steady. I screenshotted everything I could before my hands started trembling too badly to navigate the interface. The conspiracy was bigger than I'd realized. Adrian wasn't just spreading rumors. He'd recruited other club members to help him systematically destroy my reputation. And their motivation wasn't some noble concern about cheating. They wanted me out of regional qualifiers because I was blocking their path to advancement. Reading through the messages, I could see how carefully they'd planned everything. They'd coordinated which accusations to make, when to make them, and how to make them seem like independent observations. They'd crafted false stories about my behavior and distributed them strategically to maximize impact. Adrian had even assigned different people specific rumors to spread, ensuring the campaign looked organic rather than coordinated. The most chilling part was how coldly calculated it all was. These weren't friends who'd started to suspect me. They were competitors who decided to eliminate me as a threat. One message thread discussed my psychological weaknesses and how to exploit them to make me self-destruct. Another analyzed which club members would be most susceptible to their false narratives. They'd studied me like a chess position, looking for the most effective way to achieve checkmate. But in their arrogance, they'd created a permanent record of their conspiracy. I saved everything I could, then logged out and sat in the empty library, processing what I'd discovered. The betrayal was worse than I'd imagined, but I finally had proof. Adrian and his co-conspirators had made detailed confessions of their campaign, complete with discussions of their methods and motivations. They'd documented their lies, coordinated their timing, and revealed their true goals. Most importantly, they'd admitted that all the accusations were fabricated. For the first time in weeks, I felt something other than helplessness. I had evidence. Real, undeniable evidence that would expose the entire conspiracy. The question now was how to use it. I spent the rest of the day planning my approach. I couldn't just confront Adrian privately. He'd deny everything, and probably find a way to twist the situation against me again. I needed to expose the conspiracy publicly, in front of people who could take action, but I also had to be careful. If I handled this wrong, Adrian might find a way to discredit the evidence or claim it was taken out of context. I decided to wait for the perfect moment, when the maximum number of people would witness the revelation. The next club meeting was in 2 days, the last one before regional qualifier registration closed. If Adrian wanted to keep me out of the tournament, that meeting would be his final push. It would also be where his campaign finally collapsed. I spent those 2 days preparing meticulously. I organized the evidence, practiced what I would say, and steeled myself for the confrontation that would finally end this nightmare. Adrian had been brilliant in his manipulation, but he'd made one fatal error. He'd documented everything. And now I had the proof that would destroy him. I walked into that final club meeting with my phone loaded with screenshots and my heart hammering against my ribs. The room buzzed with the usual pre-meeting energy, but I could feel the underlying tension that had become normal whenever I showed up. People glanced at me, then looked away quickly. Conversations paused when I passed. Adrian was holding court near the demonstration board, explaining some opening variation to a group of newer members. He looked completely relaxed, confident in his control of the narrative. He had no idea his world was about to collapse. Ramon called the meeting to order, and I took a seat in the back row, waiting for the perfect moment. The agenda was routine: tournament announcements, upcoming events, club business. Before we wrap up, Ramon said, I want to address the regional qualifiers one more time. Registration closes tomorrow, so anyone who's planning to compete needs to get their forms in. This was it, the opening I'd been waiting for. Actually, I said, standing up, I think there's something the club needs to discuss before anyone makes tournament decisions. The room went quiet. Adrian's expression shifted slightly, but he kept his casual demeanor. What's that? Ramon asked. The rumors about me cheating, I said clearly. I think everyone deserves to know the truth about where they came from. I could feel the tension spike. Several people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. I don't think this is the right forum for... Adrian started. No, I think it's exactly the right forum, I interrupted. Especially since you've been using club meetings to spread lies about me for weeks. Adrian's face went pale, but he recovered quickly. That's not true. I've never spread lies about anyone. Really? I pulled out my phone. Because I have evidence that says otherwise. The room was dead silent now. Everyone was staring at me, including Ramon, who looked deeply uncomfortable with the direction this was heading. What kind of evidence? Adrian asked, but I could hear the strain in his voice. I opened the first screenshot. Evidence like your group chat called Chess Drama, where you coordinated a campaign to destroy my reputation. Adrian went completely white. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. I read directly from the screen. Need to be more subtle about the phone thing. Can't make it too obvious we're coordinating the accusations. The silence in the room was deafening. I could see people exchanging shocked looks. That message was sent by you, Adrian, 3 weeks ago. Want me to read more? Those are fake, Adrian said desperately. Anyone can fake text messages. Okay, how about this one? Regional qualifiers are in 2 weeks. If we can get him to withdraw, the path opens up for the rest of us. I looked up from my phone. That's a direct quote from you, explaining your real motivation. This was never about cheating concerns. It was about eliminating competition. Adrian looked around the room frantically, as if searching for support. He's lying. He's making this up because he knows people have legitimate questions about his results. Legitimate questions? I laughed bitterly. Like your claim that I asked you about computer evaluations during our practice sessions? I pulled out my preparation notebook. Here are 3 months of notes from every single analysis session we had. Show me one mention of computer evaluations. Just one. Adrian stared at the notebook but didn't move toward it. Or how about your story about my suspicious behavior at the tournament in Riverside? The one where you said I was checking my phone between moves? I swiped to another screenshot, this time from the tournament website. Here's the tournament director's report praising my focus and sportsmanship. And here are photos from the event showing me playing with obvious concentration, no phone anywhere near the board. I looked directly at Adrian. You weren't even at that tournament. You made the entire story up. Adrian's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The calculated manipulator who'd been so smooth and convincing for weeks had finally been backed into a corner with nowhere to run. This is ridiculous, he finally managed. Even if those messages are real, they don't prove anything. They prove everything, I said. They prove you invented false stories about my games. They prove you coordinated with other people to spread lies. They prove your real motivation was eliminating me as competition for regionals. I turned to address the room. And they prove that every single accusation against me was fabricated by someone who claimed to be my friend. The impact was immediate and devastating. I could see the realization dawning on faces around the room as people connected the dots. Leo spoke up first. Wait, so when you told me about his computer-like tactical sequences, you were making that up? Adrian looked trapped. No, yes he was, Zoe said, standing up. I've been analyzing those games independently. The tactical sequences Adrian described never happened. More people started speaking up, comparing notes about the stories they'd been told. The careful web of lies Adrian had constructed was unraveling in real time. I can't believe this, Jamie said, shaking her head. You convinced me he was cheating and it was all fake. Adrian tried one last desperate deflection. Even if some details were wrong, that doesn't mean the underlying concerns weren't valid. His improvement has been suspicious. Suspicious? I cut him off. My improvement has been documented and consistent. The only suspicious thing here is your campaign to destroy someone who trusted you. Ramon finally found his voice. Adrian, these are very serious accusations. Do you have any response to the evidence he's presented? Adrian looked around the room one more time, seeing only hostile or disappointed faces staring back at him. The authority and credibility he'd built over weeks of careful manipulation had evaporated in minutes. This is all being taken out of context, he said weakly. What context makes coordinating false accusations acceptable? I asked. What context makes lying about someone's character okay? Adrian had no answer. You know what the worst part is? I continued. I trusted you. I considered you one of my closest friends. I shared my insecurities and fears with you, and you used all of that information to hurt me as effectively as possible. My voice was getting louder, and I could feel years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. You knew exactly how to make me doubt myself. You knew which buttons to push to make me look paranoid and defensive. You weaponized our friendship to destroy my reputation and my love for this game. Adrian tried to respond, but I wasn't finished. And the cruelest part? You almost succeeded. I was ready to quit chess entirely because I believed people I respected actually thought I was cheating. You nearly destroyed my passion for something I'd worked years to build. The room was completely silent except for my voice echoing off the walls. But you made one mistake, Adrian. You documented everything. Your arrogance and your need to coordinate with your conspirators meant you left a perfect record of your lies. I held up my phone one more time, and now everyone can see exactly who you really are. The silence that followed felt eternal. Adrian stood there, exposed and defeated, with 20 pairs of eyes staring at him in disgust and disappointment. Finally, Ramon spoke. Adrian, I think you need to leave now. Adrian looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Ramon's tone made it clear the discussion was over. He gathered his things and walked toward the door, his carefully constructed facade finally shattered. As he reached the exit, he turned back one last time. You'll never prove you didn't cheat, he said quietly. There will always be doubt. I met his eyes steadily. No, Adrian. The only thing in doubt now is whether anyone will ever trust you again. He left without another word. The room stayed quiet for a long moment after the door closed. Then people started talking all at once, apologizing, expressing shock, asking how they'd been so thoroughly deceived. But I barely heard any of it. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe freely. The nightmare was finally over. In the aftermath of Adrian's exposure, something unexpected happened. I realized I didn't want to stay. The apologies came immediately and kept coming for days. Leo approached me the next morning with genuine remorse, explaining how Adrian had manipulated his concerns about my rapid improvement. Jamie sent a long text acknowledging how she'd been fooled by carefully crafted lies. Even Ramon pulled me aside to express his regret about suggesting I withdraw from regionals. I should have investigated the accusations more thoroughly before taking action, he said. I let the club atmosphere deteriorate because I was trying to avoid confrontation. The vindication felt good, but it also felt hollow. The damage to my relationship with the chess club ran deeper than false accusations. These people had been so quick to believe the worst about me based on nothing but rumors and speculation. More troubling was the realization of how easily a trusted friend could weaponize a community against someone. Adrian's campaign had succeeded not because he was particularly clever, but because people wanted to believe his narrative. My rapid improvement made me an easy target for jealousy and suspicion. You should stay, Zoe told me after practice one evening. You proved you belonged here. Don't let him win by driving you away. But that was the thing. Adrian had already won in a way he probably never intended. His betrayal had opened my eyes to how fragile trust really was, and how quickly a safe space could become hostile when the right person decided to manipulate it. I registered for regionals anyway, partly to prove a point, and partly because I'd worked too hard to let conspiracy destroy my goals. The tournament was held at a large convention center 2 hours away, with players from dozens of schools competing across multiple sections. Walking into that tournament hall felt different than entering any chess club room. Nobody knew me here. Nobody had preconceived notions about my improvement or suspicious theories about my methods. I was just another player with a rating and a dream of advancing to state competition. I played some of the best chess of my life. Without the psychological weight of constantly defending myself, my natural tactical vision flowed freely. I found combinations I might have second-guessed in recent months, pressed advantages I might have traded away, out of fear of seeming too good. By the final round, I'd secured qualification for state championships, but more importantly, I'd rediscovered why I loved competitive chess in the first place. After the tournament, I started researching chess organizations outside of school. That's when I discovered the Metro Chess Academy, a serious training program that met at the downtown library twice a week. The members were mostly adult players and college students who'd outgrown their high school clubs. The director, a former master named Coach Harrison, evaluated my games and offered me a spot in their advanced training group. "You have strong tactical instincts," he said, after reviewing my regional tournament performance. "With proper guidance and tougher competition, you could reach expert level within a year." Expert level. That was a milestone I'd dreamed about, but never imagined achieving so soon. I officially withdrew from the school chess club the following week. The decision surprised some people, especially after I'd been vindicated and Adrian had been essentially banned from club activities. "Why leave now?" Ramon asked. "You've earned your place here." "Because I've outgrown what this club can offer," I said honestly. "I need stronger opponents and a more serious training environment." It wasn't entirely true, but it was easier than explaining that I no longer trusted the community to support me when things got difficult. My first months at Metro Chess Academy were humbling in the best possible way. Playing against experienced adults showed me gaps in my game I'd never noticed. Coach Harrison's training methods pushed me to analyze positions more deeply and calculate variations more precisely. But the environment was purely meritocratic. Results spoke for themselves, and improvement was measured objectively rather than filtered through personal relationships and gossip. 6 months later, I played in Metro Academy's annual championship tournament. The field included several masters and experts who'd been competing for decades. I won it. The victory earned me enough rating points to cross the expert threshold, and more importantly, it qualified me for the FIDE Master Tournament later that year. Standing on the podium that evening, holding my first serious championship trophy, I thought about Adrian for the first time in months. I wondered if he'd heard about my success, and whether he understood that his betrayal had ultimately made me stronger. His campaign to destroy my chess career had instead freed me from a limiting environment and pushed me toward opportunities I might never have discovered otherwise. The FIDE Master Tournament was the most challenging chess event I'd ever entered. The competition included international players and titled masters from around the region. I went in as the lowest-rated participant, with no expectations except to learn from the experience. I finished third overall and earned my FIDE Master title. The moment they announced my name at the closing ceremony, I felt a sense of completion I'd never experienced before. Not just because of the title, but because I'd proven something important to myself. Adrian had tried to convince me and everyone else that my chess ability was fake, that my improvement was artificial, that my success was undeserved. The FIDE Master certificate in my hand said otherwise. Looking back now, I can see that Adrian's betrayal taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. It showed me the difference between a community that supports growth and one that can be turned against you by the right manipulation. It revealed how important it is to have evidence and documentation when someone tries to destroy your reputation. Most importantly, it proved that talent and hard work will eventually triumph over lies and jealousy. I still play chess competitively, though I'm focused more on college recruitment now than high school tournaments. Coach Harrison helped me connect with several university chess programs, and I have multiple scholarship offers to consider. Sometimes I run into people from my old high school chess club. The conversations are always polite but distant. Too much trust was broken for those relationships to fully recover, and I've moved on to a level of competition they can't really relate to anyway. I heard through mutual friends that Adrian tried to join a different chess club at another school, but word of his behavior had spread through the local chess community. Apparently, he's taken up online gaming instead. I don't feel any satisfaction about his isolation, just a kind of sad recognition that his jealousy cost him the thing he claimed to love. Chess communities are small and interconnected. Once you develop a reputation for manipulation and lies, it follows you everywhere. The strangest part of this whole experience is that I'm genuinely grateful it happened. Without Adrian's betrayal, I might have stayed comfortable in a mediocre environment, never pushing myself toward the level of competition where I truly belonged. His attempt to destroy me ended up launching me toward achievements I couldn't have imagined when I was just another member of a high school chess club. Sometimes the worst thing someone can do to you turns out to be exactly what you needed.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and drop your favorite part in the comments. See you in the next one.